Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with double bassist and composer Rich Leppanen of the Jazz Group Pearl Django. We caught up with him from his base in Seattle during late March 2020 to talk about their newest CD called Simplicity. As we grow into an increasingly complicated world of COVID-19, we discuss this new world, the band, the past, the future, and so much more. Please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
Hey, good. How you holding up?
As good as can be expected, I guess.
So where exactly are you located?
I'm in Seattle.
Okay, all right, yeah. Well, that was kind of the first epicenter, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, we're in the heart of it, or the thick of it, I guess. But seems to be going okay here. It's all in all.
Well, good deal. Well, thanks for taking a minute out to talk with me today. I appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure.
Let's talk about the 2020 CD by Pearl Django, Simplicity. Give me an idea of what you were going for with this album.
Well, it is kind of funny. Our approach to albums is we sort of wait until we have some tunes in mind, and it could be just a handful, 4 or 5 even, to say, it's time to record again. We need to get our material out there. We're all composers in the band, so lately, we've been very lucky in that even though we have the reference to Django in our name, we are, our original music is being well accepted out in, at least with our fans. So, we had, literally a handful, and then as we approach the studio, everybody says, I have this other tune that might be adapted to a Django style, and then we sort of at the last minute, we need 2 more tunes, and people write.
So, how did you all get together? How did this all begin?
Well, it began in Tacoma, Washington, just 30 miles south of Seattle, with 2 gentlemen, neither of whom are in the band anymore, Neil Anderson and Dudley Hill. They started as a duo. They had both been playing various styles, rock and sort of a folkish country. Dudley was a very fine swing player, so he'd play. And then Neil had been a rock player, and as we age, we try to move on, and Neil, I think, came up with the idea of doing some Django tunes. They started, as I mentioned, as a duo, moved to a trio with adding bass. For a little while, they used a drummer, but then really wanted to be in the style of Django Reinhardt, with rhythm guitar being the essence of the swing, along with the bass, of course. So they recorded an album released in 95. It hit our local public radio station, then called KPLU. The radio station picked up on it and played it, gave it serious airplay. Shortly after that, with the inception of online radio and internet radio, they started streaming music, and so it not only reached the local area, but started to reach the national area. So the original bass player left in 98, and that's when I joined, so I'm the bass player since 1998.
What's the greatest thing about this group? How do you guys work so well together?
Well, a couple of things. I have to say we are lucky in that we do indeed get to play together. So many jazz groups don't play as frequently as they'd like. Most don't. And so they have different instrumentation or different members. We have had a strong consistency of players, even though we indeed have gone through a number of different guitar combinations. I've been here since 98, our violinist Michael Gray since even earlier, probably 96. And then our accordion player, David Lang, who is also our engineer, has been involved with the group since its inception back in 94, even early 94, I think, when he started recording the band. So we stress in the band that a sense that I think all good musicians lean toward, is listening to one another. The other part of it is we get to play quietly, so without a drummer, it's just rhythm guitar setting the real swing motion to the group, and we can hear ourselves, so we can react quickly and easily. And like I said, the fact that we've maintained for long periods of time the same personnel, we're allowed to evolve, and our audience is part of that. They, like I said earlier, they accept our original tunes. They accept our version of Django music when we're playing Django tunes, and we're just being in the right place at the right time has helped. The help with the local public radio station to spread the word.
The reception up there is pretty good to your music, huh? You get pretty good crowds?
Absolutely, we do. We, like any other town, there's not an abundance of jazz clubs. And in fact, locally now we play Jazz Alley as our primary in Seattle club, and there's a couple other venues just outside the city that we play. So it's not like the good old days where you could play once a week or even once a month. We have no such thing. Most of our gigs are once a year or twice a year, but we have enough spread around the area, let's say in a 150-mile radius, to allow us to play. And then we get, as I mentioned, good, pretty fair radio coverage, both locally and nationally. And now with streaming, we started our own record company actually way back when, because nobody offered to take us on. But so the owners of the band are the owners of the record company. And believe it or not, streaming has paid off to a degree. It's not, nobody's getting rich, but a lot of people do a lot worse, and we're lucky that people have accepted our music. I think part of it, too, is that we don't compete with your jazz trio or your jazz quartet with piano, guitar, horns, or whatever. We're in that sort of border area. People who like bluegrass are prone to like Pearl Django. People who like just swing dances and don't think about the jazz aspect at all, I think they like Pearl Django.
So what do you think it is about Django Reinhardt that's so timeless that we just can never get enough of?
Well, it's very happy music. It's got a bit of sophistication, and yet some of his, one of his more popular tunes is Minor Swing. It's just 3 chords. When I joined the band, it was explained as sort of the Louie Louie of gypsy jazz, and then he has a tune like Nuage or Manoir de mes rêves, which are just incredibly beautiful tunes, played by players of all styles and not just Django-style players around the world. Django was a genius, I'm convinced, even though he could not read or write music. He created it and sung parts or played parts for the other members of the band. He was influenced by classical music, totally enamored by early American jazz players, Louis Armstrong and Ben Webster and the like. And he was able to nobody's told him he couldn't combine a gypsy attitude with early American jazz and classical music and create his own sort of sound.
Let me ask you this. Now that we're kind of in this new world, it kind of changes the dynamic of this interview a little bit. What would you like to see happen with the collective audience member that comes to see your show live after the quarantine is lifted and everybody can get out and see live jazz? I mean, everything is shut down, not only jazz, but everything else. What do you hope happens to the response after this?
Well, I've always been an advocate for going out and hearing live jazz, and I will admit we're kind of spoiled with our audience because they are out listening to us, and they don't just show up and then talk through the set. Not all of our venues are concert venues, of course. So I hope people in this era, when they're sitting home and maybe listening to some music, and they start approaching their the way they listen a little differently, there's been this major trend, and probably with lots of styles of music, except classical. Classical audiences generally will keep quiet during the performance, but people going out, but they're not there to listen to music. They're out to socialize, and so it's. I hope they would think about that and say, "Oh, well, these guys. First of all, they just stayed home for 2 or 3 months and couldn't play at all. They probably have a lot of energy and new ideas to present. Maybe I'll sit and listen to them and come out and support a little more frequently." Or, I think it's hard to say what will happen, but I think that's what would be great if it did happen.
Let's say you come to Kansas City once everything kind of gets back to normal, and you come here and you have to write up an ad release to get people to come to your show. How would you describe a live show? What would you say to entice somebody to come see you live?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. Well, just from our audience reaction, I would say this is just a very enjoyable, hard-swinging, fun band with some very fine musicianship, as I mentioned in our press release, if you got that. We have, I think, 2 exceptional players, one being our accordion player, David Lang, who, as I mentioned, is our recording engineer, but he came sort of late to the game, but not that late. He's been in the band probably 15 years. He just has this magical sense of adding essential orchestration to whatever else is going on, just little snippets here or full backgrounds here and there in each tune. He plays marvelous solos. And then Tim Lurch is a recently discovered guitarist for me. I happened to be living just a few blocks from me in Seattle, and I showed up at a club and met and discovered him. And then we had an opening, so I invited him in the band, and he's more of just a swing jazz player, a lot of blues influence, but incredible player, just supreme facility. So a person could come out and just concentrate on either one of those and have an enjoyable evening of music. But again, we are a very tight group, and like I said, we get to play with the same members frequently, and so it's kind of I don't know what the right word is, but just a very tight, fun night of music.
Hey, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Seattle, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Rich for his time in music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.